This week, oil prices have risen to fresh highs, passing $96 a barrel. A combination of the weak dollar, supply concerns in Mexico, and continued tensions in northern Iraq have all contributed. Some analysts believe oil prices will hit $100 a barrel before the end of the year. Taking inflation into account, real prices are approaching the peak of 1980, something that we never wanted to happen. A figure which then heralded, in fact, a worldwide economic slump. So what does the future hold for oil prices? And are we as addicted as ever to this fickle resource? Joining me now to answer those questions, and other questions as well, is economist Liam Halligan of the Sunday Telegraph. What do you think is the main reason for $96 or $92 today?
Economics is all about supply and demand, Sir David, of course, and there are factors on both sides. On the demand side, as is now well understood, you've got the surging energy requirements of the emerging giants, China, India, Brazil. These countries are at early stages of industrialization. They're building lots of roads and factories. That's a very energy-intensive process. Their people are getting richer. They're demanding to drive cars and have air conditioners and fridges. So per capita demand for oil and all other energy resources is going up in those countries. But this isn't just a demand-led phenomenon, in my view, as some analysts have tried to claim, because there are supply concerns, just as there were back in 1980. Back then it was the OPEC oil embargo, of course, which we know all about. But this time round, the supply concerns really are that global oil companies are pumping oil faster than we're replacing oil by finding new reserves. You know, we haven't found a major oil field in the world, despite a desperate scramble for oil, for the last 30 years. You mentioned Mexico. Cantarell, which is the second largest oil field in the world in Mexico, there are concerns that that's losing pressure. Saudi's huge oil field, Guar, there are concerns that that's losing pressure too. So there has been a desperate search for more oil reserves, and quite frankly, the international oil majors in the Middle East and elsewhere aren't coming up with those new reserves.
So that there's a lack of new reserves, as you say, 30 years and all of that. And is the threat of war, is that automatically something that rockets up the price of... And what was the price of oil a year ago?
The price of oil was a year ago was around $70 a barrel. But only about 3 or 4 years ago, OPEC was defending an oil price of $25 a barrel, and people like me thought that $30 a barrel was really high. That's how much the world has changed. Increasingly, analysts don't feel that oil will ever go back below 60, 70 or even $80 a barrel. Because here we are, Sir David, the world's largest economy, the US, is staring down the barrel of recession. Ordinarily, that would mean the oil price was coming off because, of course, the US is the world's biggest oil importer by far. But such is the surging demand from the emerging economies of the East, and such are the supply concerns now, that the oil price is remaining particularly firm, even though ordinarily, given the state of the world economy, given the fact that the global economy is now slowing quite sharply, you'd expect oil prices to be falling.
And how is it then in that case, Liam, that with oil being that important and this price being that high, how are we managing to accommodate ourselves to that? I mean, it almost sounds fatal what you just said, and I mean, and $96 a barrel when it was 70, when it was less, and so on and so forth. How are we surviving it?
There are two reasons. For the last 2 or 3 years, when we've had very high oil prices, the world has benefited from what economists call the China premium. Cheap goods from China and other low-cost manufacturers in the East flooded the world, so Western economies' inflation rates basically were held under control, even though oil prices were going high, which would normally increase inflation, because you had these cheap goods from China and elsewhere. Increasingly, though, and the Bank of England's now talking about this obsessively, that China premium is ebbing away. China is no longer a net deflationary force on the global economy. Because of its rampant surging energy demands, it's becoming a net inflationary force.
Liam, thank you very much. We look forward to welcoming you back for more news.
Thank you for having me.
Check your predictions. We'll do it all. Thank you very much to Liam there. Coming up after the news, another sex symbol, supermodel Sophie Dahl. That's in a few moments.